And a big welcome, hello from the Metabolic Balance ANZ podcast. This is where we share real stories and insights to help you understand what metabolic balance is all about and the potential for optimal health and with personalized nutrition. So I'm Cherry Wills, I'm your host, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined today by Leone Wilson, who is a fabulous naturopath and metabolic balance practitioner on the Gold Coast. Hello, Leone. It's lovely to have you join me.
Thank you for having me, Cherry.
You came on board with Metabolic Balance, I believe, in 2018. I was one of my first early practitioners who I trained up. So tell me, what drew you to Metabolic Balance in the first place?
I remember you seeking out interested parties in a particular forum that we both shared. And the reason why I jumped on it was I've noticed in clinical practice that one set of parameters, nutrition parameters for one person doesn't necessarily suit the other person. And that's clearly dependent on whatever conditions they might have. You know, like someone with hypothyroidism isn't going to eat the same food as someone with hyperthyroidism. So I was really looking for something that was tailor-made to the individual, and that was doable. So many women come to the clinic and they're restricting food or on that diet fads, and it's not doing them any favors. So I was looking for something that was based on real food but prescription nutrition.
Because you're a very experienced naturopath, are you not? If you don't mind sharing, how many years have you been working within naturopathy?
It's only been really about 10 years, but what happened was the Australian government took away health fund rebates for naturopaths. So then I did human nutrition with Deakin University. And then because of the people who are drawn to my clinic, I then decided to do a diploma of counselling and now just completed the Masters of Counselling. So I think the experience is in the education rather than the amount of time I've been in practice. So I think
Oh.
I've been studying now for probably a full 10 years, which I'm very pleased to be done with.
That's amazing. I mean, you've got so much insights. So you've got the masters in counselling now. What's that sort of allowed you to do?
I do find most of my demographic are women, and I think you'll
Yeah.
find that in most health related clinics, it's going to be 95% women. I did find that many of the women who came to me had physical symptoms, but then when you explored it further, they'd had some serious stress or trauma, usually as a child, or sometimes other extenuating circumstances. And then on the flip side of that, if you've got a chronic condition, there's going to be a mental health component to having a chronic condition and or cancer recovery. So I felt that it was a very good complement to it. And then on the flip side again, being a naturopath, those people with a mental health condition, they don't always have to have pharmaceuticals, doctor prescribed
Mm.
pharmaceuticals, which come with side effects. Being a naturopath, I've got the access to a lot of different other products that are quite healthy and won't have the side effects.
Yeah. So women are primarily the people you help usually. Is that sort of, yeah. And a
Yeah,
particularly
correct.
age range that you would.
Interesting you should ask me that, because I actually thought you were going to throw that one at me about metabolic balance. And I was like, wow, I've just signed up a metabolic balance client who's 80.
Yeah.
So I've got clients from 80 in my clinical practice and down to children, but clearly they're not suited to metabolic balance.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'm seeing a little 6 month old tomorrow. So yeah,
Oh,
6 months to
yeah.
80 years old.
Yeah, yeah. And so, what's your sort of key take home? Like you've been using metabolic balance for close to 6 years now.
I
What
have,
would
yeah.
you, how would you describe it then as what it's given you in practice?
I find that there's many women who come to me who, and I was the same, I think probably most of us have been the same, where I can relate to the fact that I used to forego food and exercise like a Trojan on the back of having hypothyroidism, trying to manage my weight. And if nothing else, all I did was throw myself into an autoimmune condition from the harsh realities of doing that. So I find that most women don't understand food. And they will say that to me. I don't understand what I should eat, the quantities I should eat, the types of food I should eat. So, with metabolic balance in mind, it's prescription nutrition. So what we've got is not only our client intake forms and all the other forms, their food likes, their food dislikes, medications, health conditions, but then there's that beautiful spot of 37 different blood pathology report comes back, and we know exactly where our client is in deficiencies or excesses of nutrients, but also what's happening in every system of their body. And that's so much different than just guessing, like, yes, I have a nutrition degree. Yes, you have a nutrition degree. But really, it's a generic guess. It's a bit like people with eczema shouldn't have histamine. It's a bit like people who have hypothyroidism shouldn't be having raw kale and things like that. We're still just guessing. We haven't nailed it. So
Yeah.
it's targeted nutrition for the individual, really.
Yeah. I often think, these generic ideas like antihistamine diet, to even say what triggers histamine production in every single person is identically the same. It doesn't even
Mm,
make sense to say that, does it? Because what triggers histamine in you and what triggers it in me will be completely unique. Would you
100%.
agree? Yes.
100%. Look, when I've been, it was a huge study load in the last 6 months. I did full-time study, full-time work.
Yeah.
And as my adrenals and depleted and my fatigue increased,
Mm,
I would get histamine rashes just here. And I know that it was not about food, it was about the state of the nation as well. And that's something really important to take into consideration.
yeah. Yeah. So, is there a particular client or somebody that jumps to mind that you think, oh, that was so wonderful helping them? Or
I
I love
have,
hearing
yes,
sort
there
of
is
stories.
actually, yes.
Yeah.
Interestingly, it's a bit like we've just spoken about. People jump on fad diets.
Yeah.
They look on Google, they're drinking celery juice and whatnot, and it's actually doing them no favors. I
Mm,
reached out I think it was 2 years ago, I reached out to a local personal trainer,
mhm,
and I asked her whether she'd be interested in working with me to improve the health and nutrition of her clients. And I must have just hit while the iron was hot. And she's like, yes, actually, I do. So she brought through many groups of her clients. But the first group, she said, well, if they're going to do it, I'll do it as well. And this is a PT who thought she knew nutrition back to front.
mm,
And she is a changed woman, and she will tell everyone, and that's why she's promoted it amongst many groups. And
mm,
we've done a lot of groups that she's brought, because her energy increased considerably, her sleep got better, and she had Hashimoto's, and her thyroid parameters are far improved. She was a standout because she thought she had nutrition down pat, having grilled chicken and steamed vegetables every single night. And as you know, that's not enough variety to
yeah.
sustain health.
Mm, yeah. I remember actually having a client similar. She actually was a part-time job working in a gym, just as a doing taking a few classes. And I remember when we got her, because she had this very subtle menopausal weight creep. So she was still doing all this exercise. She
Mm,
was sort of eating reasonably well, but the menopause had kind of hit and this weight was
mm-hmm,
going up. And there was nothing she could do about it. And I remember we got her plan back, and there was actually no chicken on her plan. And this had been like the staple
Yes.
protein for her for I don't know how long. And she's like, where's my chicken? And it was
Where's my
like,
chicken?
yeah, where's my chicken? That's what I eat. And I'm like, yeah, let's actually go with this, shall we? Let's, and that's really where, and again, I think it's doing things differently, isn't it? It's like people, when they're open to
Yes.
saying, do you know what? I need to do things differently to get different results.
Oh, 100%. And I say to my clients, I say to them verbatim, if you're anything like me, we're busy people, we reach for the same foods every day, and this is what we do without even realizing it. So there's clearly a whole parameter of nutrients we're missing out on. Like your
Yeah.
chicken lady, I had a lady who came to me, she was eating meat at most meals, and her plan came back, no meat. She's like,
Yeah.
where's the meat? And I'm like, oh, looks like you're not getting any. And this was a standout. In the first week, she lost 10 centimeters off her waist.
Yeah. Mm.
It was all inflammation.
Yeah. And they can
Yeah.
have the opposite as well. I mean, like, this is what personalized nutrition is, isn't it? It's actually finding the foods that match the individual, not the preference. So, just sort of to clarify for those listening, you do get some plans back that have a stronger animal leaning. Other plans have a stronger vegetable leaning, and sometimes they are very much in the midst of them both. A really, a real omnivore type leaning. And I think that
100%.
is the key. It's not about what we choose in the supermarket on a
Mm-hmm.
Monday afternoon or whatever it might be. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually, what is
Exactly.
it that our body needs?
And it's not what we think we need. Like I had a young
Yeah.
girl, she was the youngest, 21. She was vegetarian, but she had perioral dermatitis and stomach digestive issues.
Yeah.
And I said to her, will you take what they give you? And she's like, yep. And she got the least amount of vegetables I've ever seen on a plan and the most
Yeah.
amount of meat. Skin cleared, stomach's better, and she lost weight.
Yeah. I've had that too. It's just so cool when to just know as opposed to sort of guessing. And even we, of course, we want to take people's preferences into account. Preferences are still important, but if you
Mm,
can do the preference based on knowledge of what would be a great place to be, and then work with that,
yeah.
that's the best place to be for me.
It's about thinking outside of the box, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we work within the box, and working within the box leads us
Mm,
to usually a state of
mm,
fatigue, poor sleep, bit of digestive discomfort, and
mm,
feeling
mm,
overall blah. So we
mm,
have to think outside of that same box
mm, mm,
to change those symptoms.
mm. It also brings to mind this idea as well of uh, sticking to a food plan. One of the things that I sometimes hear, and I'd love to sort of have a little chat with you about this, is that people can sometimes say, "Oh, it's I don't want to be restricted to just the foods on the list." Now, of course, the foods, we're only following the foods while we want the change.
Mm,
But it's also interesting. I often see that people's choices expand enormously when they are seeing what comes up on their plan, because we automatically often restrict ourselves when we're
mm-hmm.
buying the same things week in, week out.
Yeah, 100%. Look, I've had a male client as part of a couple doing it together, and he's like, I can't find any of these foods. And so I went and I found where these foods are. And so I showed him where the foods were. And he goes, but I've never heard of these foods. And I'm like, and this is why we have to sort of expand our repertoire around food so that we
Mm,
can have the benefits of different nutrients. It's like people who have baby spinach on every meal. It's not going to be healthy, even though it's a healthy food fad. And
mm,
on that note, I
mm,
remember, Cherry, when you mentioned you showed the evidence of sweet potato when it's cooked has 14 times more sugar than white potato. And I use that all the time. And I'm like, well, yeah. And so because Google says it, doesn't mean it's
Mm,
true.
mm,
There has to be
mm.
science behind it.
Yeah. What were the foods, just out of interest, that can you remember what this guy told you he'd not heard of before? Just out of interest? Because often it's
Oh,
things like goat's milk
every
and
single
goat's.
green leafy except for baby
Yeah.
spinach,
So
actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I just think it's so important to sort of mention we are talking about normal, healthy veggies that are
Oh,
in your
yes.
local supermarket. It's just that sometimes there are, it is the case there are people that don't naturally have eaten. They haven't naturally eaten
Exactly. Exactly.
veggies very much.
Yes, exactly. And even if it's not in your supermarket or doesn't look so nice in your supermarket, everywhere in Queensland, and I know it's the same in Melbourne and Sydney,
Yeah,
there are little fruit markets, fruit and veggie markets absolutely everywhere. So what he couldn't find in his supermarket, he only had to go 2 suburbs to the actual fresh food market and find it in abundance, but
yeah,
even a much healthier version. I mean,
yeah,
like they're so
yeah,
crisp, they're so fresh. And that's exactly what he did do in the end.
yeah.
But, and that's why the benefit of having a metabolic balance practitioner, we can hold your hand
Mm, mm,
until you get that right. That's why we have these phases. We're helping you develop a new way of thinking about food, having new choices, a different outlook. And then once you get into your third week, then you've got it down pat. And that's the whole idea of having
mm,
someone who can not only your accountability coach, but who can guide you through it, where to find the foods,
mm.
what they actually are if you don't understand them.
Yeah, yeah, and tweaking the plan needed for you too, because that is such an important thing to be able to do for everybody.
Yes, 100%. I've had
Mm,
a couple of clients where I'm like, well, we're bending the rules. We're just not breaking the rules.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's that beautiful that quote I love. You learn the rules like a pro, so you can bend them like an artist. Attributed to
Yes.
Picasso.
Very good. See, there you go. I'll
Yeah,
remember that
yeah.
one.
Because because it is about everybody understanding we're trying to get into a great guidelines that works well for you as a person, not as a robot, which everybody does the same thing, because that wouldn't even work.
Exactly.
It just wouldn't work. It doesn't work. You've got to find the ideal way that works with your life and your lifestyle.
Yeah.
So
And a lot of people say, oh, when I finish this diet, and I'm like, I don't think this is an appropriate way to be looking at it. Like it's not a diet, it's a nutrition plan for life. And my 80-year-old, that's what she said. She said, I don't have much longer on the earth. I want to make it a good life, what I have left.
fantastic.
And I was like, she said, this is
Love it.
nutrition for life.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I'm like, 100%
yeah.
you nailed it.
That's so cool. So have you, have you got some stories or a story you could share about somebody that really has taken the knowledge they've learned with you and then applied it, for their full life? As in, this is the goal all the time, is that we want to bring people into this place of really knowing
Exactly.
how to navigate properly.
Look, I have a girl who I call my poster girl for metabolic balance, because the difference is unbelievable. But before I tell
Mm,
you her story, I've had 73 and 75-year-olds come off their blood pressure medication
mm,
because their blood pressures improved significantly, and
mm,
that's a game changer for these people.
mm, mm,
But my lady who is my poster girl, her mother is somewhat of a friend, and she came to me and she said, what sort of deal could you do if I paid for my daughter and myself to do this program? And I said, oh, yeah, we'll do it together and we'll do it for this amount. And she goes, great. She said, I'm going to pay for her, but I'm going to tell her it costs this amount so that she gives me some money, and is actually committed. I'm like, perfect, this is great.
Mm-hmm.
And mum didn't have that much to lose, but daughter was, she's the same age as my daughter, so she's 36, she was 35 at the time, 2 young children. And I feel because she was laid off during COVID, possibly that's when the weight started to creep on. And she was feeling, she'd been to see me, she was feeling tired. Her immune system was run down. So anyway, long story short, in the course of her 12 weeks, she lost 35 centimeters and 20 kilos.
Awesome.
And
So
her
how did she
mother
feel?
was astounded. Fantastic.
Yeah.
She feels fantastic. She looks like she's in her 20s. And she's a teacher at a local school. And guess who's got a lot of school teachers coming to do metabolic balance? They're just
Awesome.
like, we can't get
Yeah.
over her. She's wearing miniskirts. She looks like a teenager. And so I think I've had 4 from that school, 3 from a neighbouring school, and then 2 reach out from a different school on the coast. And I'm sure the word has gotten around, but also they see her. She's a specialist teacher, so she does travel around. And they see, they're like, what have you been doing? And she tells them, and she's still doing it, still as happy as anything.
Yeah.
And her mum is so proud.
I love it hearing the stories of what people, how they gain something like that, and that intangible, you can't even necessarily describe it, but that confidence in themselves comes back. I think you see that
100%.
with women so much, that
Mm.
it's not about the weight loss, it's not about the numbers, it's just actually just how you feel walking down the street, just getting, doing your day-to-day life.
100%. And they feel lighter. That's what they say. But they feel, you can see they're lighter in their step.
Yeah.
It's
They're
not about
lighter in
weight, per
every
se.
aspect. It's not the weight loss, I don't think. It's what you gain. It's the life you gain, that you're no longer exhausted, falling asleep on the couch, or just wanting to curl up in a ball and just not have to interact with anybody because you just don't have the energy or the mind
100%. And that's like the
resilience.
80-year-old lady who's just started. She's 1 week in. She's 1 week in and she's 2 kilos down. I know that. But she came to reduce the inflammation in her body. She had achy joints.
Yeah.
She's 80. She doesn't want achy joints for the next 10 years.
No. No, it's actually having a great
Yeah,
quality lifespan, and
100%.
not
Yeah.
this miserable last few years of pain and discomfort. Yeah. What
And
would
it
you
was her
say?
acupuncturist who recommended her
Oh,
to come.
really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's
Sorry for
awesome.
interrupting.
No, it's great. I was just going to say, what would you say is maybe the biggest obstacle that you see for people, who maybe have heard about metabolic balance, or they're sort of relating to some of the stories we're sharing, but they're like thinking, oh, I don't know whether this is for me. What would you
Um,
say to them there?
the biggest obstacle, I think, is because we have now we've now adopted a culture where socialization has to include food.
Mm.
Whereas, to be honest, I'm not sure that was always the case. So the socialization might be, let's have a mid-morning coffee and cake, or let's have some alcohol and crackers. And so what's happening is we feel we need to treat ourselves with food as a reward. And I feel that that's where things have gone a bit wrong, because food shouldn't have that emotional component, even though it does. Hence the counselling too that I've taken on. Why do we need to reward ourselves? What's going wrong elsewhere? We can reward ourselves though with food that builds us up and creates health, rather than those other foods that we're choosing. And I'll say to my clients, couldn't you meet Sally for lunch and make it a lunch date? Or couldn't you have the family over for dinner and make it a healthy dinner and have one glass of wine with it. We don't have to go berserk with a bottle of wine, cheese and crackers, and all the rest of it, and chips and what have you. If it's about reward, we've misunderstood that nutritious food is your bigger reward because it gives you the vehicle for a healthy life to live longer and reap more rewards.
Yeah, it's almost coming back to how I'm hearing you as well is what is a treat for ourselves. It's like we see there's this bizarre place of saying a treat is something that ultimately makes us feel terrible just 20 minutes, half an hour, 2 hours later. And I'm like,
100%.
I'm
All
often
stuck
like,
to the
how is that a
toilet.
treat?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, what is the treat about being running to the toilet every 5 minutes?
Yeah, yeah. Was
Yeah.
that?
It's, I think, again, it's this, it's a Google social media type, problem in as much
Yeah,
as if I had as much airplay as a lot of the people on social media, people would get a lot healthier. It's there's a lot of misconceptions around food and the rewards of food. Like
yeah,
I've got a slow cooker on with meat and vegetables out there, and I'm so excited because Monday's my day off and I can do that.
yeah,
That's a reward for me, not
yeah,
cake. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and I the other thing that I think possibly Google and social media and generally it's sort of this idea of do it yourself, DIY, sorting out your own health,
Mm.
and I don't think that's actually really helping. We've got so much information out there, so much conflicting
Oh,
information. And then this
100%.
idea that suddenly, oh yeah, do your research yourself, work it out yourself, and I think it's an overwhelm for
Hmm.
women who are trying to juggle so many different things, and then you're also feeling lousy, but somehow you're told that you're failing because you can't do it yourself. This is where I'm like, please, let's talk to a practitioner and somebody who can really just give you the guidelines. Get
100%.
going.
Yeah. I've been known to become a little bit cynical, I suppose, on the back of what you're saying. If you see clients over and over again, and they'll come to me and they say, well, I clearly need this, this, and this. And I'm like, so why are you seeing someone who's educated? Like, what is it? I talked about 10 years of study. Like, yourself, the time, the blood, sweat, and tears, and the
Yeah,
expense to get the education we have.
yeah,
And it's really upsetting when people are trying to navigate health and there's people who don't have that education or the knowledge leading them astray.
yeah. It's often the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know and you've got to learn. So whenever I
100%.
feel you hear this certainty of, oh no, this is all everybody has to do. This is everybody just eat less and exercise more. I'm like, okay, how many people have you really helped that have then got the
Exactly.
real results? Because
Exactly.
that doesn't work.
Calories and macros may work in the short term. I'm not a fan of either.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
actually think calories is just
Oh,
something that was fabricated to make people feel lousy about their food choices.
yeah.
The other
Well,
thing is with calorie counting, let's go and have a piece of cake. It's not even
yeah.
real food.
Yeah. Well, the calorie whole system was really built for manufactured processed foods. It's not
Exactly.
for real food. It's not for food that comes out the ground or is, really
That's right.
beautifully reared
Hmm.
and looked after.
And that's
That
the
is not that
difference
is
with
not what a
metabolic
calorie.
balance.
Yeah, that's not what a calorie works for. It doesn't work when you're talking about real food. It's only if it comes from a packet. That's the
Exactly.
craziness of it.
I actually
Yeah,
remember many, many years ago, like 100 years ago, it feels like I think I myself was in my 30s. Um, and I remember I must have read a book about going closest to nature. And so I had been following calories, and so I got rid of all that. And I went to the health food shop and I looked at things that were closest to nature. And what I found was I could eat so much food and not gain weight. Why? Because my body knew exactly what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
It packaged it up, it used it for all the body processes, got rid of the rest, and I was healthier, I had more energy, actually lost weight, which was obviously the idea, compared to when I was having calories of food that was manufactured that my body goes, I don't know what this is, I'm just going to store that over there.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely none.
The sort of the processed food. And even calling it food, oh my God, I could go off. I could talk about that for another 10 minutes, to be honest, or look, 10 hours even. So anyway, Leone, it's been so lovely to talk to you. And as a sort of a parting little bit of advice, is there anything that you would share to somebody that is thinking of investigating metabolic balance further?
I would say that look around, see who aligns with you out of all the practitioners. Talk to them, have an introductory section. Talk to them about any questions you have, any concerns you have, but let them also explain, because this is what I do. I'll show them all the different menu options we've been given for different clients. And then I feel that you've just got to evaluate whether these are real foods that your body knows what to do with, as opposed to all your diet foods or the fad foods that you've been asked to try and haven't worked for you. So just be curious. I think any practitioner should be available to answer your questions if you're curious to ask them.
Yeah, I think it's that curiosity of, I want things to be different and let's give it a go, as to seeing how I can make it different, isn't it?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, Leone. It's been wonderful talking to you, and I really appreciate your time. And we'll
Thank
have
you.
to do this again.
Oh, definitely. It's excellent. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you.